There is a version of you that other people have built in their heads, and it is wrong. It is made out of a few things you said on a bad day. A few choices they didn't understand, a look on your face they misread, and a story they needed to tell themselves so the world would make sense to them. You know this feeling. Someone looks at you and thinks they see you completely, when really they are looking at a shadow they drew themselves and then colored in with their own fears and assumptions. And here's the strange part, the part nobody tells you. That gap between who you really are and who people think you are is not just painful. It is not just something to fix or apologize for. It is actually one of the most powerful things you own if you know how to use it. Most people spend their whole lives trying to close that gap, trying to explain themselves, trying to make sure everyone gets them right. But what if the very thing you have been running from your entire life is actually a source of strength you have never learned to use? Before we go further, if this idea is already making you feel something, hit like on this video right now and subscribe to the channel. I say things here that most people are too afraid to say, and I want you to be here for the next one too. Okay, let's get into it. Think about the last time someone got you wrong. Maybe a friend thought you were being cold, when really you were just tired and trying to protect them from your bad mood. Maybe a parent thought you were lazy when really you were quietly drowning and didn't have the words for it yet. Maybe someone online read one sentence you wrote and decided they knew exactly what kind of person you are. And now that version of you exists in their head, walking around saying things you never said. It stings. It stings in a very specific way, because being misunderstood feels like being erased and replaced at the same time. You are still standing right there, but somehow you have disappeared and a stranger wearing your face has taken your place in their mind. Here's what almost nobody tells you about that pain. The fact that you can be misunderstood at all means you contain more than any single moment can capture. Think about that for a second. A simple thing cannot be misunderstood. A rock is a rock. A red light means stop. There is no mystery there, no depth to misread. But you, a whole person with a history and contradictions and reasons buried under reasons, you are complicated enough that a snapshot of you will always miss something. Being misunderstood is not proof that something is wrong with you. It is proof that you are too much to fit into someone else's quick judgment. The pain you feel when people get you wrong is actually the shadow of your own depth. Shallow things get understood instantly and completely. Deep things take time, and most people don't have the patience or the closeness required to actually see you. Now here's where it gets interesting, because this is the part that changes everything if you actually let it sink in. When people misunderstand you, they reveal themselves, not you. Every time someone jumps to a conclusion about who you are, they are using their own map to guess at your territory. And their map is made from their own wounds, their own past, their own fears about what certain behaviors mean. If someone assumes you are arrogant because you don't talk much, that says something about what silence has meant in their life. If someone assumes you are unreliable because you set a boundary once, that says something about how boundaries were treated where they grew up. You have probably done this to other people too, without even realizing it. We all read people through the lens of our own experience because that is the only lens we have. So when you get misunderstood, you are watching someone else's inner world leak out onto you. That doesn't make the sting disappear completely, but it does something important. It moves the weight off your shoulders. Their misreading of you is data about them, not a verdict on you. This is the first piece of hidden power. The moment you stop treating other people's misunderstanding as the truth about who you are, you get your power back. Most people hand their sense of self over to whoever is looking at them in that moment. If someone thinks you're too much, you shrink. If someone thinks you're too quiet, you perform. If someone thinks you're cold, you over-explain yourself until you're exhausted. You start living as a reaction to other people's guesses instead of living as yourself. But the people who go on to build something real in this life, the ones who create, who lead, who make things that matter, they learn early that they cannot spend their limited time and energy trying to win a popularity contest for correct interpretation. They let people be wrong about them, not out of arrogance, but out of necessity, because there simply is not enough time in one life to correct every mistaken idea someone forms about you in 3 seconds of judgment. Let's talk about why this hits so hard for you specifically, because I know it does. You are the kind of person who thinks a lot. You replay conversations. You wonder if that thing you said came out wrong. You notice when someone's energy shifts towards you, and you spend hours trying to figure out what you did. This is not weakness, even though it feels exhausting. It means you have a strong internal world, and strong internal worlds are hard for other people to read from the outside. The quieter and deeper someone's inner life is, the more likely they are to be misjudged by people who only deal in surfaces. You have probably noticed that the people who misunderstand you the most are often the people who think the least about their own inner life. That is not a coincidence. Someone who has never sat with their own contradictions will struggle to make room for yours. Here's something worth sitting with. Every person history remembers for actually changing something was misunderstood while they were doing it. Not after, while. The scientist who says something that contradicts everyone else gets called crazy before they get called right. The artist who makes something new gets called strange before they get called a genius. The quiet kid who refuses to follow the crowd gets called weird before they get called brave. Misunderstanding is not a sign that you are doing life wrong. In a strange way, it is often a sign that you are ahead of the explanation. You are living or thinking in a way that the people around you have not caught up to yet. And their confusion about you is really just the sound of their assumptions bumping into something new. This does not mean every misunderstanding is proof of your genius. Let's be honest with each other here, because I'm not going to feed you a fantasy. Sometimes people misunderstand you because you genuinely communicated badly. Sometimes you were unclear, or you assumed people could read your mind, or you reacted from a wound instead of explaining what was actually going on for you. That kind of misunderstanding is worth fixing, and fixing it is a skill, not a weakness. The goal is not to become a mysterious person who refuses to explain themselves out of pride. The goal is to know the difference between misunderstandings that are your responsibility to clear up, and misunderstandings that belong to the other person's limits, not yours. You get to be honest and clear about your intentions, and you also get to stop chasing people who have already decided who you are and don't want to be corrected. Let's go deeper into why this matters so much for your actual life, not just as a nice idea, but as something practical. Think about how much energy you have spent trying to be understood by people who were never going to slow down enough to actually see you. Think about the group chat where you tried to explain your side of something 3 separate times. Think about the family member who has a fixed idea of who you were at 15 and refuses to update it no matter what you do now. Think about the ex who tells a version of your relationship where you're the villain, and there's nothing you can do about it because you're not in the room when they tell that story. All of that energy, all of that mental rehearsal, all of those imagined conversations where you finally say the perfect thing that makes them understand. That is energy you could be spending on your actual life. The hidden power of being misunderstood starts to show up the moment you take that energy back. Here's a shift in perspective that might change how you see your whole life up to this point. What if being misunderstood by the wrong people is not a failure, but a filter? What if it is quietly doing you a favor by showing you who is not for you, before you waste years finding out the hard way? The people who only like a flattened, simplified version of you were never going to hold space for the real one anyway. Their misunderstanding saves you time. It tells you early, this person only has room in their mind for a character, not a person. And once you see it that way, the sting turns into information. You start to notice which relationships require you to shrink or explain yourself constantly, just to be tolerated, and which relationships let you exist without translation. That second kind of relationship is rare, and it is worth everything. But you will never find it if you spend your whole life trying to convince the wrong people first. There is also something happening inside you when you're misunderstood that most people never notice, because they're too busy being upset to look at it directly. Every time you are misjudged and you don't collapse, every time someone gets you wrong and you keep being yourself anyway instead of performing a version of you that would be easier for them to swallow, you're building something. Call it a spine. Call it self-trust. Call it the quiet, unglamorous confidence of someone who knows themselves so well that other people's confusion doesn't shake the foundation. This is not built by being understood all the time. It is built specifically in the moments when you are not understood and you survive it anyway. If everyone always got you immediately, you would never develop the muscle of knowing yourself independently of an audience. In a strange way, you need the misunderstanding. It is uncomfortable, but it is also the exact resistance that builds the strength you're going to need later. I want you to think about someone in your life right now who does understand you, even a little. Hold that person in your mind for a second. Notice how different that relationship feels compared to the ones where you're constantly translating yourself. That difference you're feeling right now, that is the entire point. That is what you're protecting when you stop wasting yourself trying to be understood by everyone. You are saving your full, complicated, real self for the people who have actually earned the privilege of seeing it. Not because you're hiding, but because depth was never meant to be handed out to everyone equally. The sun doesn't dim itself so that everyone standing at every distance experiences the same warmth. Some people are simply standing too far away, and that is not something you need to fix by making yourself smaller or louder or easier. Let's talk practically for a moment about how you actually live this out, because an idea without action is just a nice thought that fades by tomorrow. The first thing is to stop over-explaining yourself to people who have already made up their minds. You will know who these people are because no amount of clarity changes their opinion. They nod, and then 2 weeks later they say the same wrong thing about you again. Save your words. They are not medicine for someone who has decided not to take them. The second thing is to build 1 or 2 relationships where you practice being fully seen. Not performed, not edited, actually seen. This might feel terrifying at first if you are used to managing how people perceive you. Let it feel terrifying. Do it anyway with someone who has shown you, through actions and not just words, that they can hold the real version of you. The third thing is to separate the discomfort of being misunderstood from the meaning you attach to it. The discomfort is just a feeling passing through you. The meaning, the story that says this means something is wrong with me, that part is optional. You can feel the sting without buying the story that comes attached to it. There's one more layer to this that I think about often. Being misunderstood forces you to develop a relationship with yourself that does not depend on outside confirmation. Think about how rare that actually is. Most people know themselves through other people's eyes. They feel confident when they're praised, and they feel worthless when they're criticized, and their entire sense of identity rises and falls based on what other people reflect back at them. But if you have spent years being misread, being underestimated, being boxed into a version of yourself that never quite fit, you have been forced, whether you wanted it or not, to build an internal reference point. You have had to ask yourself, do I actually know who I am, independent of what they think? And if you can answer yes to that question, even shakily, even with some doubt, you have something most people never build. You have a self that doesn't rent its value from public opinion. That is not a small thing. That is the foundation almost every strong, grounded person you admire is quietly standing on, even if they never talk about how they got there. I also want to say this clearly, because I don't want you to walk away from this thinking the answer is to stop caring about connection altogether. That would be its own kind of trap, swinging from desperately needing to be understood to pretending you don't need anyone at all. That's not strength. That's just a different kind of hiding. The goal isn't to stop wanting to be known. Wanting to be known is human, and it is one of the deepest needs we have. The goal is to stop demanding it from people who were never equipped to give it, and to stop treating every misunderstanding as an emergency that requires your entire nervous system to respond. You can still want closeness. You can still explain yourself to the people who matter. You can still feel hurt when someone you care about gets you wrong. The difference is, you're no longer bleeding your energy out to strangers and acquaintances and people who show over and over that they are not actually trying to understand you. They are just trying to categorize you so they can move on with their day. Let's talk about the workplace for a second, because this idea doesn't just live in your friendships and your family. It shows up everywhere you go. You've probably had a boss or a coworker form an opinion about you in the first 2 weeks of knowing you, based on almost nothing. Maybe you were nervous in a meeting once and now they think you lack confidence. Maybe you asked a clarifying question and now they think you're not paying attention. People form these snapshots fast because their brains are wired to categorize quickly, so they can stop thinking about you and move on to the next thing they need to process. It is not personal, even though it feels personal. It is just how the human mind manages the overwhelming amount of information it takes in every single day. Knowing this doesn't make the misjudgment fair, but it does make it less mysterious. You stop asking, why does this keep happening to me? And you start understanding this is simply what happens when a fast, busy mind meets a complicated real person. Once you see the mechanism, it stings less, because you're no longer taking it as a verdict on your worth. You're seeing it as a limitation of their attention, not a limitation of your value. There's another layer worth naming here, and it's one that took me a long time to actually understand. Sometimes the people closest to you misunderstand you the most, not the strangers. Strangers have no story about you yet, so in some ways they're more open. But the people who've known you for years, they built their idea of you a long time ago, back when you were a different version of yourself. And some of them never update the file. Your family might still see the scared kid you were at 12. Your old friends might still see the person you were before you changed your mind about who you wanted to be. This is one of the most disorienting kinds of misunderstanding, because it comes from people who love you, which makes it feel like it should be easy for them to see you clearly. But love does not automatically come with accurate vision. Love can actually make people cling harder to an old version of you, because that old version is familiar and comfortable, and the new version of you requires them to let go of something and learn you again. That's work, and not everyone is willing to do it, even people who care about you deeply. Recognizing this can be painful, but it can also free you from expecting the people closest to you to automatically be the ones who understand you best. Sometimes the people who see you most clearly are the ones who met you exactly as you are now, with no old file to update. I want to bring this back to something practical, because I don't want to leave you with just a feeling. I want to leave you with a tool. The next time someone misunderstands you and that familiar tightness rises in your chest, the urge to explain, to correct, to make them get it, try pausing before you react. Ask yourself one question: is this person actually trying to understand me, or are they trying to be right about me? Those are two very different things, and they require two very different responses from you. If someone is genuinely trying to understand you, even if they're getting it wrong right now, that person deserves your patience and your clarity, because the door is open and your words can actually walk through it. But if someone has already decided who you are and is just looking for evidence to confirm it, no explanation you offer is going to land, because the door was never open in the first place. Save your energy for the first kind of person. Let the second kind of person be wrong about you. It costs you nothing in the long run, even though it feels like it costs you everything in the moment. Think back to a moment when you were badly misunderstood, one specific memory. Maybe it's recent, maybe it's from years ago, and it still visits you sometimes. Notice how much power that moment still has over you, even now. Notice if some part of you is still trying to go back and explain it correctly this time, still trying to win an argument that ended long ago with someone who has probably forgotten it completely. That is what unprocessed misunderstanding does. It keeps replaying, looking for a resolution that was never coming. Real freedom here isn't getting that person to finally understand you. Real freedom is deciding that their understanding was never actually required for you to be okay. You get to close that loop yourself, right now, without their permission or their apology. You can literally say to yourself, quietly, in your own mind, I don't need them to understand this the way I do. I know what happened. I know who I am in it. That's enough. It might not feel like enough the first time you say it, but say it anyway, because the feeling catches up to the decision eventually. It always does. There is a kind of quiet confidence that only comes from having been wrongly judged and choosing not to let it define you. You cannot fake this kind of confidence, and you cannot shortcut your way to it. It has to be earned through actual moments of being misread and staying whole anyway. So, if you are in one of those moments right now, if someone in your life has flattened you into a character that isn't really you, and it's been eating at you, I want you to consider that this might not be a wound. It might be the exact place where your strength is being built, whether you asked for it or not. The very thing that feels like it's breaking you a little might actually be the thing carving out the depth you're going to need for whatever comes next in your life. You were never meant to be fully understood by everyone, not because something is wrong with you, but because you are a whole person, and whole people are too much for a glance to capture. The parts of you that confuse people, the contradictions, the quiet, the intensity, the softness underneath something that looks hard from the outside. Those are not flaws to be corrected until you become simple enough for everyone to get in one look. Those are the actual texture of who you are. Some people will only ever see the outline. A few rare people will take the time to see the whole shape. Your job was never to shrink yourself down until everyone understands you instantly. Your job is to keep becoming fully yourself, and to trust that the people who are meant to really see you will slow down long enough to do it. Everyone else was just passing by, and that was always going to be okay. If this video actually meant something to you, if any part of it felt like it was speaking directly to something you've been carrying, do two things for me right now. Hit like, because it tells this channel to keep making things like this instead of watering it down. And subscribe, because there's more where this came from, and I don't want you to miss it. I'll see you in the next one.